Good morning, everyone. We're going to have our third online session. We're going to have some minutes for people to log in, and then we start. Okay, so now let's continue. According to our calendar of activities, we're going to continue with the learning activity number 2. That means week number 3. So we're going to check our calendar, and as usual, I'm going to share with you some screenshots and highlight the most important information for you to follow. Okay, so as you can see here, let me change a little bit the color. Alright, so this is learning activity number 2. Started last week on May 31st, and we will finish on 26th. That means on Thursday this week. This is our online session talking about anecdotes, and this is the link for you to access here. This is the main objective of this lesson, which is narrar anécdotas haciendo uso de la estructura gramatical y el vocabulario requerido. We have some activities and evidences. The first is a reflection activity. Then we have a blog, a PV. Then we have an interactive activity, what happened to me. Then we have another evidence that is called the happiness advantage. We have timelines. And finally, we have the online session that takes place right now. So, as usual, I'm going to share with you the screenshots referring to the material that is offered on the platform. Alright, so we have here, you click on activity 2. We will show you here the information for activity 2. We have learning activity number 2. We have to check this document, which is a PDF file. Then we have the material. Remember, we have an online version and we have a downloadable version. And then we have extra material. For now, we're going to check only the learning activity learning guide and then the downloadable material. So click here first. So when we click there, we have the aprendizaje número 2. We have a brief introduction, which means the most important information you need to know to start the lesson. And then we have the most important objective, that is narrar anécdotas haciendo uso de la estructura gramatical y vocabulario requeridos. And the competence that we will be developing is interactuar con otros. It's a little bit difficult to see there. Interactuar con otros en idioma extranjero según las estipulaciones del marco común europeo. On the next page, we have a little description of the evidences that we will have to do. It says, actividades de reflexión inicial, so we have to click on the bottom, activity 2. We have to check the material. We have to check the material You won't believe what I heard. And then remember that you have to access the questions and concerns forum if you have any questions about the material. So this is first, checking the material. Then we have the evidence, the activities that you have to submit. The first evidence is test activities. We have the interaction here. It says, en esta evidencia se debe realizar un video donde escriba 3 situaciones que lo hagan enojar, haciendo uso de los adjetivos para expresar sentimientos, emociones, situaciones y personas. Luego publíquelo en el blog Activities y comente al menos 2 videos realizados por sus compañeros. Se recomienda revisar el documento descargable, ya que este contiene información detallada para realizar esta evidencia adecuadamente. Para participar en el blog, sigue las instrucciones a continuación. And then you follow the instructions. It clearly mentions that it's a video, but the video you don't have to like show up your own self. You can use a video editor, or you can have an animation, but not really you have to appear on the video. Then we have the next activity, that is what happened to me. You have to click on the bottom as usual, activity 2, click on the activity and do the activities as stated in the instructions. Remember, if you have any questions, you can ask me via the questions and concerns forum. This is an interactive activity, so basically you have to click there and follow the instructions that show up in every single window. Then we have another evidence, that is the happiness advantage. You have to share a personal anecdote talking about the concepts of happiness and success. You should check the documents, the PDF file that we will check in a few minutes, and then follow these instructions. The final activity is called timeline. In order to develop this activity, you have to follow this link, ourtimelines.com create, and follow the instructions in order to create your own timeline. Not necessarily has to be the true information. You don't have to tell the truth all the time, but you have to follow the instructions in order to tell a timeline. It can be an imaginary timeline. The most important thing is to have a production from you using the grammatical structure that we have studied. And these are the instructions. Alright? And then we have the final online session, which is taking place right now. On the next page, we have a very short chart in which you will see the evidences: happiness advantage, what happened to me, the PVs, online session and timelines, the assessment criteria, and what assessment technique is being used. Finally, in number 4, we have some vocabulary that is useful for you to develop these activities. Alright, so this is the first document. Now we're going to check the second document, which is the support material. I'm going to show you where you can find it. Here. So this is the second material that we're going to check. So we click here, downloadable version. Again, this is a PDF file. It's just a little bit longer than the first one. The first one was about 7 pages. This is about 20 pages long. We're going to have a really quick browse on it, so you can have a clear, quick idea of what it is about. So here we go with the first session, which is You Won't Believe What I Heard. It clearly says that we're going to use the grammatical structure past perfect tense in contrast with the simple past tense. So it's basically two grammar structures, past perfect tense and simple past tense. I know you're already familiar with this simple past tense, but maybe you're not really that familiar with the past perfect tense. So on the next part of the text, we have the most important information that this material included. First, the past perfect tense in contrast with simple past, some adverbs and time expressions for these tenses, vocabulary about feelings and emotions, and anecdotes and stories. So the first one is the past perfect and the simple past. So here it says, we use the past perfect to chronologically organize two activities that took place in the past. The activity that took place first should be in the past perfect tense. There's one example. When I got home, this is in the simple past, my husband had cleaning the house. So this activity is number one, and this activity is number two. When you read it, they are organized differently, but in a real timeline, what really happened first is the activity that in this case is in the past perfect. That information is what you see a little bit further on this very same document. It says, first activity, my husband cleaned the house. Second activity, I got home. Another example. Tom had left when his mother called. According to this, the first activity is Tom left and the second activity is his mother called. Basically, you can use simple past and the past perfect in order to narrate anecdotes in different order, in different timelines. In real life, the order of activities is not going to change, but the narration is going to change. Not the order of the activities, but the way you narrate it. Then we have the grammar structure with some examples in affirmative, negative, yes, no questions, and WH questions. So as usual, we have a subject in all cases, but we have some variations with regards to the verb, which we use the past participle, very important, always the past participle. And the position of have is a little bit different because in affirmative is here, in negative is in the same place, but in the questions you change the position, it's before the subject. So you see it's a little different. So you better have in mind that the auxiliary verb for the past perfect tense is the verb has. And of course, we have to use the past participle form of the main verb. Let's move on. The second topic is adverbs and expressions. The expressions are when and after. We have some examples here. They had already finished their dinner when she decided to join us. Another example. When he had done his homework, he walked the dog. You can see the position of this word when is different here and here. Here is in the middle of the sentence, and here is at the beginning of the sentence. However, in this case, I use a comma. In this case, there are no commas. Similar with after. Examples: after I had drunk 3 beers, comma, I felt dizzy. Or I got to the movie theater after the movie had started. In this case, no comma is necessary. And we have the meaning of these two expressions. And the first one is at or during the time that something has happened, and the second is later than the time that something had happened. And then we have other expressions like already, just, as soon as, until, and by the time. Further on, you will find examples of each of them. Example with already, example with as soon as, example with until, example with the expression by the time. The next topic is the vocabulary about feelings and emotions. We have these are common vocabulary, common words that we use to express our feelings and emotions. So angry, annoyed, anxious, ashamed, awful, baffled, blissful, bored, brave, cheerful, confused, determined, disturbed, disturbing, embarrassed, embarrassing. And then we have the meaning of each of them. And so for the following page. We have more vocabulary and the translation to Spanish. Finally, we have the anecdotes. Hold a second. There. We have anecdotes. Again, we're going to work on the past simple tense and the past perfect tense, and we're going to use the adverbs and time expressions that we studied before. We have a little bit here of examples for you to tell anecdotes. For example, to generate interest, to put an event in sequence, to address the audience directly, and to end an anecdote. So we have these expressions that will help you. So you can have a look at them, and if you have any questions, you can tell me now. Finally, we finish with the structure of anecdotes. It says anecdotes, like sentences, have their own special grammar order. Look at the chart below to learn about the stages of an anecdote. You will see here that the anecdotes and phrases above correspond to different moments of the anecdote. And then we have an outline of what an anecdote should look like. We should start with a title. Then we have an introduction. In the introduction, we have to get the audience interested in what we're going to talk about and explain the situation in the background. Then we have a beginning, tell how the story started. Then the most important events. Usually you tell the problem, the circumstances that made this anecdote memorable. And then we have an ending, which is basically the outcome, the final, the results that came out of this anecdote. And then we have a teaching or morale lesson that you learned out of it. We're going to have an example here of what an anecdote should look like. The title is Procrastination Doesn't Pay. And the beginning is, the introduction starts. It says, I got a story about why you shouldn't procrastinate. The introduction is, I'll never forget the day I had to give my first presentation of work in front of the board of directors. My boss called me that morning at 7 a.m. to remind me how important the presentation at 10 a.m. was and to wish me luck. This is the beginning. Then we have the most important event here. I had just finished my presentation at 6:45 a.m. after I sang Apple line. So as soon as I got to the office at 7:30, I grabbed a huge cup of coffee and went over my presentation. Even though I had finished it all of last minute, it looked pretty good. Then I logged into my email account and began uploading the presentation to my account so I could open in the conference room. Suddenly, an error message appeared on the screen. The file was too big. Can you imagine my panic? I decided to look for a USB to save the file, but believe me, at that hour, I was the only one in the office. Since I had arrived before everyone else, no one could help me. I had to leave to buy a USB. By the time I went back to the office and saved my presentation, it was time to jump in my car. I began driving to the conference center, and you won't believe what happened next. My car ran out of gas. By that time, I was already 9:45 a.m., and I was sure I wasn't going to make it on time. Just then a miracle happened. Coincidentally, I saw my boss passing in her car. So these are the most important events. Then we continue with the end of the story. In the end, my boss gave me a ride, and we got there just 5 minutes before 10 a.m. As soon as we arrived, I inserted the USB. As it opened, I felt like I was going to have a heart attack from stress. The presentation went well, but to top it off, my boss scolded me for not being more prepared. The moral is don't procrastinate, which is basically the same as the title. Procrastination doesn't pay. Then after this example, we have some comprehension exercises and a little bit of practice that you should do before submitting the evidence. Now I'm going to share with you some websites for you to do the exercises. Hold on a second, please. Here we go. So you go to your web search engine. You type the most important topic here. That is past simple, past perfect. I usually suggest this website, English page. So you click here, English page, and you will see the verb tense tutorial. So home, verb tense tutorial, past perfect. You have all the past perfect forms. Some examples and what it means. Remember that it's to express one action that happens first and another action that happens second. We have another use, like example 2, before something in the past, and no continuous verbs, and some other examples. Then we have the exercises, verb tense exercise 11 and 12. Let's move on to exercise 11. You click here and you will see the exercise. The idea here is to complete with the verbs in parentheses. So you will basically have to type the verb in the past simple or in the past perfect. If it's in the past simple, you say got, or submitted. But if you think that it's in the past perfect, you say not showed, no, but you say have shown. Remember that the past perfect, you have to use the auxiliary have, and so, and you click on check. In this case, this is okay, this is correct, so for that reason, it's already clicked, but this is incorrect and incorrect. So you have to make the correction. This is exercise number 11. You can move on to exercise 12. Click here on next, and you will find the same. Grammar starts with simple past, past perfect, but in contrast with present perfect tense. This is a little more difficult for you. This is one website that you can check on. Or you can simply go to the Google website and you say simple past and past perfect exercises. And I suggest you check the first 5 or 10 websites that are usually the most updated. For instance, this one, English iPhone, which is a German website. Basically is fill in the blank, similar with the version parentheses. This is one that I really suggest. This is a good one. And the Ego for You is another good one. This is a little more interactive and it has got a little more variety of exercises. We have the theoretical explanation here, the uses, and then we have the exercises. Exercise 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, so on, so on. So let's go, for example, to the kilograms exercise. You see that we have a text, a little bit more in context, and we have to complete with the verbs in parentheses. And then you check the answers, or you show the answers, depending on what you really want to do. Okay guys, I'm going to stay here for a little 5 more minutes if you have any other questions. And if that is not the case, so thank you for your attendance and participation here. Remember that you can contact me via the the platform, the Classical Consort forums, or using the WhatsApp group that we have on for us. Okay.
No, mañana tengo cita. Para mirar dónde y cuál.
Hello, Denise, do you have any questions? Okay, so as we said before in the presentation, so these are the most important things that we should follow. This is our schedule of activities. We click on Activity 2, check the material on Activity 2 in this document and this document. The first document says information using the event, grammar past perfect and simple past tense, and we have the adverbs and expressions of vocabulary and understood stories. We have some examples of the past simple and the past perfect. We have the grammar structure for these activities. We have the connectors when and after, and some other expressions like already, just, as soon as, until, and by the time. We have some vocabulary. We can check it on whatreference.com and the meaning of the vocabulary and the meaning in Spanish. We have the grammar function of this, past simple and past perfect. Some common expressions we use when telling our anecdotes. The structure of an anecdote, an outline of an anecdote, and an example of an anecdote. Remember the morale. The learning of the story is basically the same as the title of the outline. This is the guía de aprendizaje. The most important information. The evidence number 1 is PVs. The interactive activity, what happens to me. For evidence, the happiness advantage. And evidence timeline, so you have to go to this website and do the activities there. And of course the online session we have here. And this is the basic outline of the most important activities. Then we have some vocabulary that you should check. Alright, let me see if you have any questions. Let me see if you have any questions. That's the end of this online session. Thank you for attending. Goodbye, everyone.